Joining us, welcome. We are super excited to have you in the room tonight. We are here tonight. We are at our season 7. I mean, time just keeps flying all the time, and I'm so excited because guess what? We have another powerful woman in the room, and I can't wait to introduce her to you. So, without further ado, I'm going to go right ahead and I'm going to invite her to the stage. Welcome. How are you?
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Awesome. Thank you for being here. And so, April, I know you're here. They're watching now and they're thinking to themselves, okay, what is her story? What is she going to say, right? But before we jump right into it, I want to give you an opportunity to go right ahead and introduce yourself to them. Tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So, my name is April Nowlin, and I am a life breakthrough coach. And many people go, what is that? Why would you do that? So, life coaching isn't new, but I chose specifically to be a breakthrough coach because I wanted to help people overcome the challenges that were keeping them back from living their purpose. So, my passion, like what I live for, is helping women to create a life they love after the trauma of heartbreak, and then helping them to prepare for the love they deserve.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Helping them to prepare for the life that they deserve. And we all know that we deserve the best life. And so tonight, I can't wait to get into your story. I know you have a lot to share. There's a lot that you are definitely can share with us. But I want to start from the beginning. Let's begin to unpack your story and tell me where it all began for you.
Oh, wow. So my journey started about 20 years ago. At this point, it's been about 25 years. So I've been coaching for about 11 years. I started this coaching business in 2013, and I was a business coach. So I helped entrepreneurs, small businesses with their marketing strategies and all those good things. And then in 2019, I went through a divorce. But here's the thing. It wasn't just a divorce, it was my third divorce. That started when I was 21 years old. So at 21, I was sitting in a courthouse with my then husband, and we were getting our marriage dissolved. And so I thought, okay, that's fine. I'm going to move on. I'm going to live this great life. I'm going to find the love of my life, and things are going to be exactly, like the fairy tale. Well, lo and behold, 10 years later, at 31, I found myself again sitting in a courthouse, ending another marriage, but this time I had a 6-month-old baby. And so at that moment, I said, I'm done. I'm not dating anymore. I'm just going to focus on my career, focus on my child. That's it. I'm done. But then again, at 41, you guys start to see a pattern here? At 41, I woke up one morning to my husband saying, can we talk? And anytime someone says that, it's like, okay, this isn't going to be good. Now, this is my third husband telling me that he no longer wanted to be married. He never wanted to be a husband. He never wanted to be a stepfather. And essentially, he married me to help pay his bills. Kid you not. Those are the words that came out of his mouth. And at that time, I said to myself, okay, something is happening. All the other areas of my life, my career was going great, finances were going great, health was going great. But for whatever reason, this particular area, I kept repeating the pattern. And so the first few months, I was like, I'm done. Like, I am just done with life. At the time, I was on staff at a church, and I would have people say, "Oh, let me pray for you," and I would tell them, "Don't pray for me because I'm angry with God." Have y'all ever been angry with God? I was angry because I felt like I had done everything right this time. We went to premarital counseling. We did all the things that people said, this is what you do to get it right. And one day I was out walking with God, and I told God, I was like, I'm angry with you. Like, I'm angry. You could have stopped this. You could have, stopped this from happening, and you didn't. I'm angry with you. And what God told me, never forget it. He said, April, he said, you need to move the finish line. And I had never heard that, had never seen that in scripture. What do you mean move the finish line? And what he told me was, I have an intended finish line for every area in your life, for your health, your finances, your relationship, your mental status, everything. But because of life, because of decisions, that finish line has been moved. And what he told me in that moment was, if you allow me, I will help you turn the pain that you're feeling into purpose. And so I went through a year-long healing journey of therapists and lots of ice cream. Y'all, when I say lots of ice cream, just ridiculous amounts of ice cream. I even went to the top of a mountain out here, hiked to the top of a mountain, and had a funeral for my old life. Because I told God that never again did I want to be in that position, but I was going to figure out what was going on. And so after a year, God was like, I want you to tell your story. And I'm like, wait a minute. I work for a church. They know I've been divorced once, but you want me to tell the whole world that I've been divorced 3 times? Like, no, I don't want that shame. I don't want that, I don't want that. And what God told me was, he said, it is your voice that are going to heal other women. And so I wrote a book, very short book, but wrote a book about that journey. And from that moment on, God said, I need you to shift what you're doing. No more business coaching. I now want you to help women that look like you. And so that's how I got to this place. That was that moment, was being divorced 3 times and having to make a choice. Am I going to let this destroy me, destroy my confidence? I had a 10-year-old daughter. Is this going to be her example of relationships and of marriage and how you're treated and healing? Or am I going to use this to propel my purpose? And that's what I chose.
Oh wow! Okay, that's I told you we're going to be unpacking some stuff here today, because I mean, I like what you said, that you went to the mountain and you buried the old life. Tell us about that experience. How did that go for you?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly where it came from, but what I knew that year, which, after all the other times I had gone through divorce, this was the one that was like that wake up call, right? What I knew was that I was not going to go back ever again. And I needed to mark that with, it's almost like when God told the children of Israel to like lay the stone so like you can remember, what you've been through. That was kind of my line of demarcation, that like, I'm not going back. And when I thought about a funeral, memorial service, homegoing, those are for the living. It's not for the dead. It is for the living to say goodbye. And for me, I marked that, and I spent, it's a place called Sedona. I'm in Arizona, in Phoenix, and it's a place called Sedona, and they have these beautiful red rocks. And I turned off my phone for 3 days, and I told my family, this is where I'm staying. I'll check in like once a night. If you don't hear from me by Wednesday, come looking for me. And I did. I just hiked, and I sat on top of a mountain with God, and I just said, never again. And in that moment, I was willing. That's going to be the key tonight. I was willing to do whatever it took to never go back to that state.
Yeah. Wow. I love that keyword, willing, because many of us are able, but we're not willing. And so, yeah, that's definitely powerful. So now you've gone through that. You said the first one, I think you said 21, and then it was 31, and then 41. And so when that first time happened, how was that for you? Realizing, okay, hold on, I got married, and now I'm so young, and now it's ending. How was that for you? Tell us about that.
That first one, because we split on mutual terms, I'm
Okay.
going to be honest with you, it didn't really hurt as bad, right? It was one
Mm.
of those things where we had gotten married fairly quickly for all the wrong reasons. And I think 2 years in at that point, we had just realized, like, we weren't even living together at that point. I think he was living with someone else. I was dating someone else. It was a whole thing, y'all. So when
Mm.
we got divorced, it really was more of, okay, we just need to make this final, right? We were friends, we were joking. So it did not feel so much like a divorce because we had broken up, I think a year before that. So it didn't feel like it didn't feel like the death that you feel with a divorce.
Right.
The second one was a little bit different. So that one was a little bit harder because that was my daughter's father.
Mm.
And I had quite a few people saying things like, "You're going to ruin her life. You're going to keep him from being a good dad." All these things. But what
Mm-hmm.
I knew when I made that decision was I knew that her life would be better with us apart than us together.
Okay.
And so I do not believe that you stay married for children. I
Hmm.
believe that you can still be two amazing parents, even if you're not in the same household.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so with that one, it hurt, but it hurt more because of her, because I was concerned about what her future was going to be like. I wasn't afraid of being by myself, things like that. So that one was a little bit harder. And I did go to counseling briefly, but I didn't do the work. That situation is one of the ones where I say all the time that just because it doesn't hurt doesn't mean you're healed. So the first one didn't really hurt. The second one hurt a little bit, but it was my decision, so I was kind of ready to leave. So because of that, I thought I was healed.
Wow. I love what you shared there. Because many times we can do all these sessions, we can do all that stuff, but if we're not doing the work, then we're not able to get the results that are necessary for us to be able to heal. So I love that you dropped that nugget right there for that person who may be watching, and because we're stuck in emotions and we're
Yeah.
not able to deal with them, or we're not willing
Hmm.
to deal with them because of the pain that we have to unearth, and we don't want to go through that or sit through that. And so instead we just do nothing, and we think that we kind of paint an image of doing something where we're just fooling ourselves. So I'm glad that you dropped that nugget. And so, okay, so there are three divorces. You talked about the first one, we talked about the second one, so let's talk about the final one. And I
Yeah.
say final because I'm declaring that we say final
Amen.
one.
Amen.
Yes. And so for that one, at the age now, you're 41, which now you're more mature. I mean, a lot of
Mhm.
stuff would have been happening in your life, and then at the place where you were at that time, how did that feel for you? Because like you said, the first time it was like, okay, you kind of saw it coming, you kind of understood because of the how young you were, and then the second time was a bit more challenging because of your daughter, and now you're here again. How did that feel?
That was devastating.
Hmm.
That was devastating for several reasons. Um, One, because this was the time I thought I got it right. Okay. We had done a lot of the traditional things that you're told to do. We went to premarital counseling. We did the things. So this time I thought, this is it. Like, I got it right. Um, the second thing with that one is that I was caught off guard. So the first two, I knew, like the first one, like we knew, like this is over. The second one, I knew about a year before we got divorced, and then I got pregnant. And so it was one of those things where it was like, okay, let me see if this will change things. So it was like a little bit of hope in the second one. It wasn't completely like this is done. Now, the third one, I was completely caught off guard. I was literally about to take a shower on a Saturday morning, and he walked into the bathroom and he's like, "Can we talk?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And the worst thing I thought I would hear was maybe he was having an affair. I was preparing my mind. Okay, what's the worst I'm going to hear? What I did not expect was for him to say, "I no longer want to be here," and the reasons he gave for not wanting to be here. So that was the one that crushed my world. And so that was the one that sent me into depression. That was the one that made me angry with God. That was the one that really made me say something is happening here. And what did it for me was my daughter was 10 years old at the time. And I remember her walking into the living room a few days later and her saying, "Mommy, I don't want you to die alone," at 10 years old. And I was like crushed, crushed. But this was the one that made me question my purpose, my identity. I mean, I was that person that was like, "God, why didn't you stop this? You know, I've served you. I'm on staff at a church. I'm doing the things you told me to do. Why didn't you stop this?" So I was angry with God. I was angry with him, angry with myself, fell into a very deep depression. So that was the one that crushed me.
And how long did it take for you to overcome that and pick yourself back up again?
I would say it took a little over a year because the first few months, it was just dark. I'm not going to sugarcoat what y'all see right now. This is 5 years later. Okay. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was ice cream, sleeping, getting out of bed, literally because I had a child that needed to survive. That's what my life was like the first 3 months. People would call me, "Girl, I want to pray for you. Don't pray for me." Like I would literally say, "Do not pray for. I don't want to hear your prayer. Don't." And then about 3 months after, I had a really good friend, and I know we'll talk about like support systems, but a really good friend that started talking to me, and she was just like, "April, what you gonna do? What are you gonna do? You gonna sit here, or you gonna heal? What do you want to do?" And at that time, I still didn't know exactly what I wanted from the future, but I knew I didn't want to be here again, and I knew I wanted to be a better example for my daughter. And so the first thing I did was I went to therapy. And I took it serious. So I had gone to therapy before, but after like 2 sessions, I was like, "I feel better. I'm good." And so I started going to therapy. And the first session, the first thing she asked me was, "Tell me about your childhood." And I was like, "This has nothing to do with my childhood. Like, I'm trying to figure out why I'm divorced 3 times." And she said, "Tell me about your childhood." And what I didn't realize was the things that had happened in my childhood. I got moved around a lot. My mother was an addict. So being under that lifestyle, I had survived childhood molestation. All of these things shaped what I thought relationships were supposed to be, shaped what I thought relationships with men were supposed to be. And so what I started to realize was not that those things were the only reason I made those decisions, but they were such a big part of them, and I needed to face them. And so as I prayed about him and was going to therapy, God gave me an image. He gives me a lot of images, a lot of pictures. And he said, every experience that you have in life, every person, relationship, whatever it may be, each of those experiences are like a tree in your heart. So you've got this forest of trees. And the tree that you have with relationships with the opposite sex, that tree is dead. And what has been happening is the roots of that tree have been affecting every area of your life. And he said, in order for you to truly be healed, you're going to have to uproot the tree. And what he showed me was after the first divorce, I cut off a couple branches. I'm good. After the second divorce, I cut down a little bit of the tree. I'm good. But God said the roots are still there. And until you deal with the root of what is causing these different decisions and take accountability for these different decisions, I can't plant something new there. So sometimes we're asking God, "I want you to do something new. I want you to do something new." And God is like, "But you got something in the way. You're going to have to uproot that." And so it wasn't until I said, "Okay, I'm ready to reach back and uproot what has been keeping me hindered," that is when real healing began.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And so, as you went through those sessions and you started to deal with this stuff in your childhood, did that also help to bring a lot of clarity for you in terms of there's, what you said would have happened in terms of you being molested when you were younger, moving around? Did that help to pull out some stuff for you too as well?
Yes. So what I learned was terms like dealing with abandonment and rejection, not feeling love. Where did my insecurity? Because the funny thing is that I say it like this. I married the same man 3 times. He just had a different name. I married the same characteristics. And so I had to ask myself, why am I looking for this characteristic? And it was because of those feelings of rejection, those feelings of abandonment, feeling like I wasn't loved, being bounced around like I wasn't wanted. And so essentially, I would attach myself to two things specifically. One, it would be men that I knew I was better than. And I hate to say it that way, but that was what was happening because I saw my mother rely on men for everything. And I saw her get mistreated, abused, things like that. And so my mindset was, you're not going to do that to me. And so I made more money than every man up until that point that I had dated, because to me, that was my safety net, right? Like, you won't be able to control me. And then two, it was, hearing those words, I love you. Okay, you love me, great. Now, I may not be in love with you, but hearing those words, I love you. And so once you put those two together and then you are unhealed, it's like, okay, here we go, cycle. And what happened was I realized that I would get divorced. I'd be good for about 3 years. Then I would get lonely. I would, all those things would come up. I would date someone, we'd marry in about 2 years. And then 3 years later, we'd be divorced. Same cycle, same cycle, same cycle. And so, yes, going to therapy, and that's a difference. If you guys ever, want to know difference between a therapist and a coach, therapists help you reach back into your past and uproot those things that you're carrying with you. Coaches like myself, we focus on propelling you forward. And so that's what I had never done. I had never sat with, why am I making these decisions? Why am I allowing certain people to treat me this way? So yes, it brought, and when I say uprooting, just imagine a big old tree with deep roots. When it gets pulled up, oh y'all, it was hard. It hurt. It hurt, but it was worth it.
Wow, wow, wow. And so as you went through that time of pruning and and healing and so on, who did you have as your support? Who was there to, to help walk you through?
It was a bunch of people. I believe in having a circle of care when you are healing, and whether that's, what I do, healing from heartbreak, financial healing, physical healing, whatever it may be. I believe in having a team of care. And so for me, that looked like a therapist, that looked like a coach, that looked like my pastor, that looked like my friends, my family. I even went through talking with someone who was like a financial advisor. It really takes a team of people that you can trust. But the biggest thing is making sure that you are assigning the right trust to the right person. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. Your pastor is not your therapist. Your mom is not your therapist. Even if your pastor and your mom are therapists, doesn't mean they need to be your therapist. And so it's making sure that you're not putting undue pressure on like your best friend. Your best friend is there to be your best friend. You might need professional help. And so I had it all. To this day, 5 years out, I still have people that I rely on. If I meet someone, if I'm dating someone, I'm like, hey, are y'all seeing anything? Are y'all seeing the same patterns? To this day, 5 years later, I still have I call them my tribe of crazy, that I can rely on to make sure I'm not falling back into the same patterns. So ask for help and get your circle of care together.
Wow. I love that. Ask for help. Because you see, I've found that so many times we are struggling to ask because we think that if we ask, it's a sign of weakness, and we don't understand that that's the sign of strength, because you're not expected to carry it on your own. You're not expected to do it all by yourself. No, not at all. And
No.
so, mhm,
I wanted to say this. We
definitely.
look at
Go
that
ahead.
scripture where God says it is not good for man to be alone. And we
Mhm.
use that scripture a lot when we talk about intimate relationships and marriage. But I believe that scripture is a blanket scripture for all of us. I do not believe that God intended us to do life alone. And so, especially when you're healing from anything, it is just imperative that you have people by your side that are going to support you and walk you through your healing.
Yes. And so tell us, what are some of the things that you learned through that whole process? You know, if you heard, if there was a woman right now and she's watching and she's like, oh my goodness, this sounds like me. I can totally relate to what she's sharing. You know, what were some of the things that you learned from it?
Yeah, one of the first things I learned was to give myself grace. There are so many times that we keep ourselves in this mental, emotional prison, particularly due to things like shame and guilt and condemnation. We keep ourselves in a prison. So, that number one is what keeps us from asking for help. A lot of women that I coach, they come to me and they say, April, I just don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. And you're right, you don't know what to do. And so you need someone there that can tell you what you need to be doing. So give yourself some grace, right? Life happens to all of us. There are many times we get into situations and it's like, man, this wasn't supposed to happen to me, or this doesn't happen in my family, or, I'm so ashamed to talk to someone about this. It is the truth that sets us free. It is us being able to be honest and vulnerable with someone that is going to unlock the keys we need for healing. So, first one is give yourself some grace. The second one, which we've talked about, is ask for help. If we are struggling with our finances, we ask for help. If we're struggling with our physical health, we ask for help, right? So when it is a trauma of our heart or our minds, we need to ask for help. But number one, give yourself some grace.
I love that. Give yourself grace and ask for help. I absolutely love it. I had to bring it up on the screen because I think that that's something that we are lacking. We don't know how to give ourselves grace because we're so, we're so accustomed to kind of coming down on ourselves because we're our worst critics. We're the first, anything happens, we're the first person to ensure that we just stick it to ourselves because obviously we want to be the best
Mhm.
self. We want to be the best that we can possibly be, but at the same time we don't understand that we're actually hurting ourselves. We're bringing more harm to ourselves than we actually are helping ourselves. So I'm really glad that you shared that nugget right there about giving yourself grace. And so as you had to learn how to give yourself grace, coming out of having to overcome 3 divorces, how were you able now to give yourself grace? What are some of the things that you were able now to implement as you started, as you're healed and you're moving on and you're, preparing yourself for what's out there for you?
Mhm. I'm very practical. I'm very transparent, but I'm a very practical person. One of the things that I had to do was shift my thinking about those situations, right? I had to start thinking from a place of victory and not from a place of being a victim. I could not sit here and talk today with you guys about going through this with the confidence of healing if I constantly looked at myself as a victim. This happened to me. This happened to me. And so one of the first things I did was I started to change my speech. Our voices have so much power. You think about how God created the world. He didn't lift a finger. He used his voice. And so we have the power to create our lives as we want it. And so instead of saying this happened to me, I would say this happened for me. This happened for me to become a better parent. This happened for me to become to walk in my purpose. And let me be clear, I am not saying that God calls these at all. But God does allow. He allows us to make our decisions and our choices, and he allows us to suffer the consequences of them. And so for me, it was looking at myself and saying, okay, am I going to use this pain for something? Or am I going to sit in it and never fulfill my purpose, never reach out to anyone else? Like I had a choice. And I chose, once again, I chose to use my pain to propel my purpose. Shameless plug in my little book, Move the Finish Line. I talk about the three reasons why I believe God allows us to go through stuff. So the first one is for pruning. Okay. There are just some things that we're going to have to go through to get better. You think about pruning of a tree, right? You got to cut off branches. Some of them are alive, some of them are dead. You may have to cut off some fruit because you have too much of something. But pruning hurts. It sucks. It hurts. But God uses that as an opportunity to get us to where He needs us to be. The second thing is, I believe God allows us to go through some things so that we can rely on Him. I think of God as like a coach. I used to run track many, many years ago in school, and my coach would be like, okay, this is what you do. This is how you practice. This is what you do. And you know what would happen? Anytime we didn't listen to our coach, it was like, oh man, I should have listened. And I feel like God allows us to go through some things because He's like, hey, I need you to remember I'm your coach in this. I need you to remember what I've told you to do. And then the third thing is, I believe that God allows us to go through things so that we can help someone else. I feel like God knew that I was strong enough to survive 3 divorces so that I can help that woman that's gone through one, or so that I can help women to get into healthy relationships so that they never have to experience divorce. You know, there are women who've gone through multiple divorces and didn't survive. They've lost their mind, they've taken their life. And I've been there. And so I feel like God was like, you're strong enough, right? You are strong enough to get through this so that I can use you to help someone else.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And you said something there that I mean, I kind of already, I can think of what your response would be, but I still want to ask. As you said, a lot of persons would have lost their mind and would have committed suicide and so on. What kept you together? What kept you grounded and saying, no, 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 hold on, I have to fight this thing and I can overcome this? What was that one thing that kept you?
It was a combination of things. It wasn't just one thing. Some days it was my daughter, but I'm going to be honest with you. Some days I had those thoughts that, you know what? She'd be better off without me. It's okay. She doesn't need me. Some days I thought about my mother. So I shared the story about my mother being an addict. Well, she died of a drug overdose when I was 23. She was 41 years old. And when she died, I made myself a promise that, like, I'm not going to end up like her. And when I mean end up like her, not necessarily avoiding being an addict, but I was going to live. I remember looking at my mother's life, and she had only been on the plane one time. She had only been out of her state a few times, right? All the dreams that she would tell me she wanted to do, she never got to do. And I would think back to that and think to myself, no, like I am going to live. And through that, that meant I've visited 30 of the 50 states. I've visited 4 of the 7 continents. I have, single or not, I just committed to living. And so there were nights where I would cry myself to sleep and just say, okay, make it to the next morning. And it was just as simple, make it to the next morning. Make it to the next morning. And then lastly, I had friends. I had friends that I could call at 2 o'clock in the morning saying, I'm not good. I'm not good. And they would pray, they would talk to me, they would do the things I needed in that moment. So there wasn't just one thing that made me say, I want to keep going. It was all those things working together. In some seasons, it may have been a book that I was reading, and I would read that book and I would get just a little bit more hope. In some seasons, I would hear a sermon. In some seasons, I would hear a song. It was almost like this puzzle piece that kept me alive. And so it was like God knew, okay, today she's not listening to a sermon. Like, I didn't want to hear it, but the song is going to come on. Or she doesn't want to listen to music today, but one of her friends is going to call out of the blue. Or she doesn't want to hear her friends, but she's going to have a moment with her daughter that's going to remind her of why she needs to be here. So there wasn't just one thing. It was a collective of things. It was going to see, a therapist, and that therapist saying, all right, we're going to work through this. So it wasn't just one thing.
Wow. Wow. I love that. I love that. Thank you for being so, honest and transparent with us and sharing, because I know someone right now who's watching who may be going through a similar, situation right now. They can definitely relate and they're able not to apply as they're, they're learning and hearing from you. And so if you had to, looking back at everything that you've gone through, if you had to change, is there anything, if you had an opportunity to change it, you will change?
You know, I would love to have not been divorced 3 times. It's one of those things. I get asked that question, and it's one of those things. It's a catch-22, right? I don't know who I would have been had I not gone through that. And I love who I am. I love the work I get to do. I love my purpose. I love it all. At the same time, I'm like, God, maybe after the first one, we could have learned these lessons. Like, it didn't have to take 3. Um, so I don't know that there's anything I would change. Outside of, I would love to have my mom here, right? To see something different. One of the things that, I think about is I tell women, you can move the finish line, you can heal. I wish I knew that at 23 and I could tell my mom, you can do this. But, I was 23. I didn't know any different. So as much as it was painful and things like that, it has made me who I am today. And I believe that me choosing to heal has made me a better mother, a better friend, eventually a better spouse, just a better me. And so, I don't know. I don't know who I would be had I not gone through all of that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And how did you cope with the loss of your mother? I'm curious how, because I can tell from how you speak, of course, she was someone you loved and valued dearly. How did you cope with that?
So, I didn't really deal with a lot of it until 2019 when I was going through therapy. I dealt with the death of my mother by pretending she didn't exist to a degree. So there were a lot of people, and I was raised by my dad and my stepmom, who is my mom now, right? I love her. But a lot of people didn't know, and even to this day, that know our family, unless you really knew us, didn't know that the woman that was raising me wasn't my mom. Because of the relationships I had at that time with my parents and things like that, I didn't feel like I had the freedom to really talk about what was happening. There was no one around me who could really help me grieve, right? There was no one that could say, hey, I've been through this. And so for many years, I dealt with it in 2 ways. Just ignored it, like, all right, we're just not going to think about her. And then on the flip side of that, I was angry because at the time that she passed away, I was 23. I had a sister that was 16 who had a 1-year-old baby and was pregnant. And I was angry because I felt like, how dare you choose that life over us? I was angry because of her choices, I had to go live with my dad and I couldn't stay with my mom, right? Best decision for my life. But when you're young and in that place, you don't understand. And it wasn't until I started training as a coach and understanding addiction and things like that I gave my mother grace. And I remembered conversations that we had. We're now looking back. I was angry in those conversations because she would tell me, hey, I partied last night and I can't pay the rent. And I would see the remorse on her, but I would be so angry. Like, what do you mean? And I'm like 17, 18, like, how dare you, And so once I went through my healing, I could see life through her eyes. And knowing now that addiction isn't a choice. She didn't wake up every day going, I really hope I'm still an addict today, right? Like, no. And so that is what's helped me to forgive, to walk out forgiveness. I told myself with my daughter, I want to be better, right? I want a different relationship with her. And we have she's 16. We have a wonderful relationship. And so that's how I cope with it. But I really kept it buried for about 20 years, And it was going through therapy, pulling up those roots. That is when I really grieved my mother. It was like 2019, 2020. And she died. And I was 23. So I think that was like 2000, right? So yeah, that's how I dealt with it. There was really no one who said, go see a grief coach, go see a therapist, go. No. Mm-mm.
Wow, wow, wow. And so you have gained so much knowledge, you've gained a lot of wisdom, and you've gained a lot of experience through it all that you've been through. And I know you have your business now, you're coaching, you're doing many major things. I want you to talk to us a little bit about that. Tell us how that is going and how what you have been through has really, pushed you into living out your purpose.
Yeah. Like I said, when I first got divorced in 2019, I didn't want to talk to anyone about it. Like I didn't want to share it. I just wanted to make one more divorce disappear and live my life. And it wasn't until the end of 2019 when God said, I want you to share your story, is when I wrote the book. And the book is really just about like that year that I went through healing. And I remember when I published the book, I sat literally at this desk, y'all, and I was like, all right, I'm done. I did it, God. I wrote the book. I told my story. Life is moving on. And in that moment, he said, nope, you're not done. And so from there is when I went and I got a life coaching certification. So I am certified, trauma coaching certification. And I just felt like God was saying, I need you to now help others. And so I do have a coaching, few different coaching programs where I do individual coaching, I do group coaching. And I really work with two groups of people. So it's women who are healing from heartbreak. So that may be divorce, that may be that you're a widow, that may be someone who says, like me, I keep finding myself in these same relationships. So I work with that group of women to make sure that they are walking out their healing. And then I work with another group of women who may say, you know what, April, I'm ready to date, but I don't know how to do this thing. And one thing that I realized was that no one taught us how to date in a healthy way. No one taught us what healthy relationships look like. What do I look for? And so my goal in that is that I can help women to choose better, make better decisions. Because if you have a healthy dating life, you're more likely to have a healthy marriage. And so those are really the two groups that I work with. And so I do have individual and group coaching. And then earlier this year, I launched a really cool membership, and it's called When Love Comes. And my goal really is to prepare women for when love finds them. And so it's really a place where women can go. We do live sessions, we do trainings, we do Q&As. I have experts on, and we just talk about what does that journey look like to prepare ourselves for healthy love. So those are the ways that I currently help people.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I love that. When love comes. And you said it's a membership. Can you tell us a little bit more about that membership?
Yeah.
How you
Yeah,
can get a
so
part?
for one price every month, you join the membership. There's a resource library in there. So there's videos that I've done, there's interviews that I've done, there's downloadables, there's like a self-love guide, just a whole bunch of things. But the cool thing about the membership, and the reason why I started it, is because I would have people who would say, April, I really want to work with you, but like I can't afford like the hourly rate to work with you. And I want to make sure I'm reaching as many people as possible. And so in that membership, it's a flat fee. And then you get a monthly mini coaching session with me where you can ask your private questions. I do a monthly training where we'll talk about what is attachment style, what are healing, how do you have a healthy conversation? So we do different trainings. I have different experts that come in. So similar like tonight, we'll have people come in who are experts in different areas of relationships. And then I also do a live Q&A. So you're like, April, I just have this really quick question. You can hop on, do the live Q&A. And so, yeah, it's kind of like a one-stop shop. And I want to answer something. So, Robert, I've been seeing your comments. Thank you so much for commenting tonight. You said you have broken men too, not just broken women. And you are absolutely right. The only reason why I don't serve men right now, Robert, is because I believe that to effectively do that, I need a man's voice. So I am actually in talks with a male relationship coach to do a program for men. I just don't feel like I am the expert in men, obviously. I'm kidding, y'all. But I feel like to really serve men, I would like to have a men's voice at the table. So stay tuned, Robert. I will make sure that you guys know when that happens.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And how long did it take you to get things off the ground with your coaching? Did it come naturally for you, or was it that you had to take a while to put things in place?
So it was twofold. So I've actually been a coach since 2013. And Robert, you didn't offend me at all. Um, I've been coaching since 2013 is when I started my coaching business, but it was a business coaching business. So I specifically worked with small businesses, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs to coach them in their marketing strategies. So I had been coaching for a while, but personal coaching was different. And so one of the things that I did was I wanted to make sure I had education behind it. So I did take a very lengthy life coaching certification program. And that taught me some of the more specifics. So it taught me things about how our brain and our hearts and our bodies work together under different conditions. And, it taught me more of the science behind coaching, if that makes sense. And then I also took a few other certifications. One is in trauma support, because I did work, or I do work with women who are coming out of toxic, abusive relationships. And I wanted to make sure I understood how to serve them. So it was twofold. It was one, I felt like I was great with talking to people and great with coaching, but I knew that if I wanted to pivot to this new area, I wanted to make sure I had the education and the science and the tools behind it so that I wasn't just out here telling my story, but I could be effective with people who say, April, I want to work with you.
Beautiful, well said. And I know we're getting ready to head out shortly, but before we go, April, I want you to, you know, speak to that woman right now who may be watching, or that man who may be watching us right now, and they may be in a similar situation, and they don't even see the end. They don't see themselves being able to overcome like you do, like you did. Would you be able to give them those words of encouragement to help pull them out from where they're at?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, if you're someone, man or woman, who is watching tonight and you may be saying, April, I'm stuck. I am lost. I do not know what to do. The first thing, like I said earlier, is give yourself some grace. You might be unhealed, but you're not unbroken. I mean, you're not broken. You're not unlovable. God still loves you just as much as the day you were born. So, no matter what you've been through, no matter what people have told you, no matter what your mind has told you, no matter what you have told you, you still have time for healing. You still have time to pursue your purpose. The word says that the steps of a righteous man are ordered, but we have to take the first step. And if all you can do today is take one step, you take that first step, and that may be praying, that may be reaching out for help. You take that first step, and then God will give you the next steps. A lot of times, our healing is delayed because we don't see the big picture. Had you asked me 5 years ago if I would be on a show like this telling my story, I would have laughed in your face. I didn't want anyone to know I had been divorced 3 times, but here I am. And that journey took one step at a time. And every time I took a step, God met me with the next step. So give yourself some grace, give yourself a hug if you need to, and just take the first step.
Absolutely beautiful. Take the first step. Just take the first step. So, April, you talked about your book. Could you tell us again what's the name of your book, and tell us how we can source it for those persons who are watching right now? They may want to purchase it. Tell them where they can get a copy from.
Absolutely. So the name of the book is Move the Finish Line. And you can find it on my website, which is aprilnowlin.com. On the resources page, there's free downloadables, there's links to different videos, and then you can also purchase the book there if you want to.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So you heard it. Go to www.aprilnowlin.com. Just go right there. You'll see all the information. Even if you're also interested in the mentorship program too as well, you'll find that information right there. So just click that, just go right ahead and search it. I'm telling you, you are going to get exactly what you're looking for. She is a phenomenal woman. She's very excellent at what she does. She has that level of professionalism that you need, that touch. So if you're looking for that, then you're looking for April. So I really want to encourage you to go ahead, check her out. And And tell us again, where can they find you on social media? If they're watching right now, they're like, oh, I want to connect with her some more. Tell them where we can find you on social media.
Absolutely. So just type in my name, April Nowlin. I'm April Nowlin on all platforms. Connect with me on social media. That's where I will always give you like what's coming, updates and things like that. So yes, April Nowlin, wherever, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, it's all just under my name.
Awesome. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And what's coming up next for you? Is there anything that's coming up next for you?
Yes. So at the beginning of 2025, registration will open in about a month. I am relaunching a program that I did a few years ago, but it's called Dating with Confidence. And it is a 6-week program, and we dive into everything dating. So we talk about what does healthy love look like? We talk about setting boundaries. We talk about attachment styles. We talk about all the things that prepare us for healthy relationships and healthy dating lives. So connect with me so that you guys can stay tuned and get the information on that. But that is coming at the top of the year, revamped, all new program to help you guys date differently.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. April, it was definitely a pleasure and an honor to have you here tonight sharing with us. Thank you so much for sharing. I know that someone who was watching tonight, they have been blessed, they've been encouraged, and they've been inspired by your story. So I want to say thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I have been I think we scheduled this months ago, and I've been so
Yeah.
looking forward to tonight. So I just appreciate
Yeah.
you. I love the work that you're doing. And
Thank
so
you.
thank you for having me.
You are most welcome. You are most welcome. And so, guys, you just heard it right here from Coach April. She shared so much. And don't worry, if you came in late and you missed a lot of it, you're going to get an opportunity to also come back so that you can rewatch what she would have shared here tonight. If you want to learn more about what she does, go right ahead and follow her on all social media platforms at April Nowlin. Get the information that you need so that you can make the decisions that you need to make to get to the place where you are called to be. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you share this link with a friend. Share, 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 share. And those of you who are probably catching the replay, welcome, welcome, welcome. We hope to have you next week as we hear another powerful woman who is going to share another powerful story. It was a pleasure having you guys here. See you right back here, same time and same place next Wednesday. Have a great night. Goodbye.